everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight to Scotty's Brewhouse and the invitation. So it's not every day that you get to hang out in a restaurant with the guy whose name is on the side of it. And Scott, we're really appreciative of you just coming out tonight and giving us your time, and not just your time, but also opening up the room here to your story and just kind of where God's taken your life and the ups and downs and ins and outs of that. And tonight, guys, as we chat, we'll be chatting here for the next 20, 30 minutes or so. If you have a question that you want to send in tonight, whether it be for Scott or just about life in general, we'll do our best to answer. And you can just text those questions in, and the number is, if you want to type it in your phone, and you have it in your phone, and you can send a text later if you want. If you don't want to, you have to, but you have the number. But it's 317. You actually have to put the 317 in there, but it's 317-550-5070. And I'll say that a couple more times throughout our conversation. But 317-550-5070. And if you have a question for Scott, it comes from his story, or maybe something we share throughout the time, go ahead and send in the text, and we'll do our best to answer the question. But Scott, we talked a little bit tonight, as Andy was kind of introing. Thursday night we did this event with Dayspring, and you've been involved with Dayspring for years, and 28 years have been providing homes for homeless families here in Indianapolis. And it was a great event Thursday. We were excited to raise the money we did, and just awareness. And if anybody wants to be involved in serving with Dayspring, please talk to us before you go home tonight. We'd love to get you guys connected with that. But we talked a little bit about this idea of what a house is and what a home is, and so take us back to little Scotty Wise time. What was your house like growing up? Like, were you here in Indy? What was the Wise house?
The Wise home. The Wise home. I was born in Fort Wayne and lived there for 3 years, and then moved to Muncie. And so I consider Muncie my home. Actually, Yorktown, the suburb of Muncie. And I lived my entire life there, and kind of just. My parents were entrepreneurs, their parents were entrepreneurs, so I kind of was raised around this idea of self-fulfillment. Like, it was, you go out and you chase whatever dream you want, and you can do whatever you want. There was no boundaries. It was, if you want to be an artist, Scott, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be whatever you wanted to do, they did. There was no pressure to do. My dad was in construction, and so, and I hated doing, all summers I was doing that, and quickly found out I didn't want to do that. So didn't know that this was my gig, but this kind of fell, well, I don't even want to say fell in my lap. I think there was a plan and a purpose for my life, but didn't know that this is what I was going to do. So growing up, church was kind of, I don't want to say an afterthought, because we prayed every night, like we say our prayers when we went to bed.
Sure.
But it was more like, I think you hear the words a lot, Christian by convenience, like it was Easter and Christmas. But I went to,
we call that being a creaster.
that was me. That was us. And so, but it was, the problem was the traditional church, which, as I talked to you about, I'm not here to slam on any. There's lots of gods out there. A lot of people are praying for different things, and but the way when I was born a Methodist or born into a Methodist church.
Hey, me too. All right.
And I went, I got confirmed. I was baptized as a baby. I went to church camp. I did the thing. I think that, I don't know if they were just things that my parents told me I was supposed to do, and I just felt like there was an obligation. I'm first child. I'm OCD. I'm type A. I felt like I had to do everything to make everybody happy. So I looking back and laying on the couch in front of everybody, I can self-analyze and see kind of why I did some of that stuff. But going to church, when I would go to church, it never, ever connected for me. There was never, ever a connection. I would sit on the pews, and it was everybody in their Sunday best, and I don't know if I was just a typical kid that was disgruntled because I didn't want to wear my church clothes and go sit there and understand. I didn't understand what the preacher was saying, and it was turned to this page, and I would try to read through what he was saying, and I would say 10 minutes into the sermon, I would be drifting off thinking about what I was going to do when I got out of church, or what homework I had to do or whatever. So that was kind of it. God was there, but it was more like, I was thinking of this story, and it's fun. I'll tell you a sidebar to the story here in a second, because I just think it's really crazy, and you'll get it in a second. So the story that you some people have heard this. I think I've probably heard Steve Poe say it, but you hear about the guy that he doesn't have a job, and he's racing around his house, and he's interview after interview and never can find a job. And finally he finds one, and he gets an interview, and he's going in for a second, and he thinks he's going to be hired, and so he's at home, and he's putting on his best clothes, and he's looking all, he's clean, and he's showering up, and he's like, yes, today's the day I'm going to go get my job, and he can't find his car keys. And time's ticking, and he's like, please God, just please let me find my car keys. If you do, please, I promise I'll be there every Sunday, and I'll pray more, and I will be this, and nothing happened, and he turned around, and he sees his keys laying on the counter, and he's like, hey, God, forget it, I found them, don't worry about it. And I think, so the sidebar story to this, because I was thinking about saying this on Thursday when we were out on the patio, and thank you,
Awesome.
appreciate it. And when I was thinking about what I was going to say when we were going to talk, I'm showering up, I'm getting ready to come down and meet you guys, and I have terrible eyesight. If I don't have my contacts in, I'm like 2400. I'm almost legally blind. I've got a retina detachment in this eye, so I've got crazy eyes. I'll look at you, and I'm really looking at you, and I've got all kinds of mess going on. So one of my contacts, I always plug the sink up because I don't want to lose them when I'm popping them out and trying to clean them. And right before I was coming in, and I'm thinking of that story in my head of telling it, I drop my contact and it falls in the sink, and I go, please God, don't let that go down the sinkhole. And I'm like, and it's sitting right there, like right by the sink, and I picked it up. It's just something that small, just like hit me. I'm like, he's sitting here either laughing with me or laughing at me or just saying he's with me, getting ready to go do the thing that I was doing with you. So I totally, I'm a babbler, as you can't tell. So I like it. I started with going with a home, but I had to drop that story because I just think that's kind of where I was raised. I was that person that was like, oh, please God, let me get an A on this algebra prep test. And then I would get the A, and then I would kind of go on with life. And then I was like, oh, please God, that girl is so hot, I want to go out with her. Please let her go out with me. So that was kind of how I was a Christian. Well,
you missed it. And when he answers those prayers and they're twin sisters, don't date the other twin sister. We heard a story about that earlier tonight. It's never good to date the twin sister. Anyway, well, I think, one thing that's interesting, and we didn't have this, on our interview, but interesting you said that. Is like, I think a lot of times people that maybe grow up in church and they might be, type A driven, firstborn kind of kid, like sometimes I think it gets to the point where just the idea of like, hey, this relationship with God is about like, hey, don't do bad stuff and come here all the time. And maybe your vision would be at like, if you really grow and be part of the church, you might be able to like help us like hand out bulletins 100%. Or something. The vision is so small that if you are an entrepreneur, if you are a dreamer or a visionary, it's like, man, I don't even know how my life would fit within, like, I don't want to just come to church and hand out bulletins.
Sometimes there's so much expected, or the pressure's put on yourself, or it's put on you by others, that you always have to be perfect. And maybe, I don't know, sometimes that fall from grace is so much harder, the crash is so much harder. And
sure.
I hate to say that you have to be broken before you can be fixed, but I don't know if that's the case. I don't think that's the case with everybody, but for me, that was kind of how it was. It was kind of like, one of the things we wanted to talk about tonight when we were kind of going over the prep for what we wanted to say, and hopefully if I can just affect some people, whether it's in this room or if it's my staff or it's the people I touch out there, I just, sometimes you're talking to a 22-year-old and I get now what my parents were trying to do and how I was never going to listen until I had to experience it for myself. But I equate it to like, when I got my driver's license, I didn't buckle my seatbelt until I had that first wreck and hit my head against the steering wheel and blood, and now I don't go anywhere without so I don't know if, I wish that you didn't have to tell somebody, listen, you don't have to get to that point where you're so broken that you got this thing that is there for your taking. And I also talked to you a little bit to say that I think there are people out there that sometimes think they're so broken that they are afraid to come because they're like, who would want me? Who would want to fix this, And so, and I'm here to say that he wants everybody. He wants everybody.
Yeah. Well, take us on that journey a little bit. So you grow up, it doesn't really stick, right? You got bigger visions and dreams for your life, and so you graduate, you launch out to head to college, and where does that journey go? Because you got like little Scotty going to church and it doesn't really make sense, and all of a sudden, people know, so now we know that part, and then they know that there's buildings with your name on it, and we get awesome beer and dill chips. And that buffalo dip, if we had that tonight, I ate almost all of it, which is going to probably be negative tomorrow. But so fill the gaps in there. You leave home and you hit college. What's that look like?
So I hit college, and like I said, at home you go to church and do those things because your parents say you have to.
Yeah.
Now you're in college, and there's no more really that the reins. The reins you're cut loose.
Get some freedom.
So I've got some freedom, and so church just totally went to the wayside. There was no, in that part of my life, it just wasn't there. It was not that I never stopped believing. I still prayed on my own at night, but there was no biblical influence. There was no, I think even going to like Christmas services became fewer and far between.
Sure.
And so it was more just, all right, fill the day with, you got work and you got school, and then you got, I was swimming in college, so I had swimming, and so I was just busy with that, and there was just no church influence whatsoever, and none by my parents, and it just was gone. It wasn't there.
Sure. So I mean, in that time, I mean, what really drove you at that point? Because you don't start a chain of restaurants like this on accident. So I mean, what was the motivating factor for Scott at that point?
You know what? I by nature, I think I'm a people pleaser. I read Twitter, and I shouldn't, because it's an easy way to get your feelings hurt. And especially when I say the stupid stuff I say, so I have no room to really say anything bad about it. But I think when I was in college, I was waiting tables at, I kind of did the progression that most restaurant owners do, that I was working in the kitchen at this bar and grill, at Dill Street Bar and Grill, that people that know it from Ball State. And then I moved into I washed dishes as a freshman, then I started cooking, and then I got a job at Applebee's, back when Applebee's wasn't the place to go. It actually was at one point. So I did that, and I just graduated. So I graduated Ball State with a marketing and PR degree. Didn't think restaurant was my gig, and I went to Texas and lived for about a year, and hated my day job. And I was bartending at night, and that's kind of when the light flickered, and I'm like, all right, you keep gravitating towards this industry, why not try to make it something?
Yeah.
And so most normal people would then get into like management, or go that direct, take it step by step, and you're not supposed to do what I did, just go all in at the age of 22 and buy a little bar and clean it up and then try to make something successful out of it. And it's not because of me. I mean, it's because of all the, we've got the people that are here today, the 1,500 people that I work with every day. This thing is because I'm just good at collecting a group of people and trying to pull the best out of them that they didn't think they had in them. I believe I'm a little bit of a leader and a motivator, and I think that's what. And I surround myself with people that are just much greater than I am, much smarter than I am, and they make me look fantastic. So that's kind of how this whole thing. That's the quick story. In our 20th anniversary is next year, so I can't give you the whole story. I mean, I can tell you about the recession, and I can tell you about losing $1 million in my second restaurant. And I can bore you with all the sad details, but those are the things those are the powers that you got to fight through to get to here. I'll tell you, I was praying a lot. The second restaurant I opened, so I was way too successful the first restaurant I opened with the Scotty's. I'm 22, I've got a restaurant in my hometown where I just graduated. Of course, all my buddies are in drinking, it's fun. I'm like, this is easy, why didn't everybody have a restaurant? So then I opened restaurant 2, and that's when God kicked me right in the nuts and said, this is why we don't give everybody a restaurant. So I lost $1 million in that second one. I ran it for about 3 years. I remember, I specifically remember this, there were Sundays where we'd go around and my wife and I would put flyers underneath, we'd go to church parking lots of all places and put flyers under their windshield wipers, and these ministers would call me and just give me a beating on the phone. I'm like, listen, God is not going to be mad at me. I got rent to pay, I've got people, I've got a mortgage, and so it was a struggle. But those things, everybody knows in all of our lives, whether it's personal or professional, those things that you go through are what create your character. Those are who you are. I mean, I could have laid down and given up and cried, but I didn't. I picked myself. I think that kind of is the church in me that came out. It was never give up. This isn't the end of the story.
Yeah.
I'm not done with you yet, Scott.
Yeah. So you're working through that. You're opening restaurants all over the place. You're losing $1 million. You're making money. Things ups and downs. You're getting married. You're having kids. Then you kind of come to a little bit of a fork in the road where faith kind of comes back into the mainstream, and it had a little more to do, like, and it's kind of a cliche story, right? You kind of go to college, you do your own thing, then you get kids, and you think, you know what? How are we going to raise these kids, right? So how does that affect the Scott Weiss kind of faith journey as the family grows, and you're seeing you got the impact there. Tell us about that.
You know, it's even rewinding a little bit before that, I didn't think I was going to have kids, which is crazy to me now. Anybody that has kids and understanding just what they bring to you in your life, it completely changes that. And I was always that guy that, you know, I apologize if you don't have kids, because I hated the people that always would say that kind of crap and be like, great, I'm glad you're fulfilled and you got soccer on Saturdays and I'm busy and I'm running restaurants and now I get it, because I'm that guy that's just busy with soccer all day.
That's me. I'm getting text message from my wife right now. My 8-year-old son just won his football game, so won our first playoff game. Yeah, thanks, appreciate it.
So I just kept telling my wife that we'll have kids after I get one more Scotty's open, and she quickly realized that was kind of a ploy, that it was never going to stop. And I wasn't ready. I'm by nature, I think I'm a little selfish, or I wouldn't name every restaurant after myself. I'm conceited, I get it, I got issues. So I finally, around the age of, I think it was when I was 33, I said, I'm ready. I said, if it happens, it happens. And God, did it happen 4 times over? It happened. And so but I'm so blessed and thankful. And so when I think that was, again, God coming into my life. At the time, I didn't know it, but I think He planted those seeds for a reason, because when they started getting just a little bit older, I think my oldest Slater was about 2 or 3, and my wife was born Baptist. She was, and they were big into their church. And so it was really, for her, it was weird for her to marry a sinner like myself and not go to church every Sunday and not do the things we were doing. And so she pushed it for a while, and then she finally gave up on me, because she knew I just knew church as what I knew it when I grew up, and it wasn't for me. And during this whole time, there was this weird thing where my sister is huge into her church. She moved to South Carolina, and she became, I don't even know what religion she is, but she's just so into her church, and she loved it. And I hated that I couldn't understand why she loved it so much, and I didn't. And so my wife said, we've got to find a church to put a moral compass into our children. I mean, and I get that. And I was like, you know what? I agree. They need to go through what I went through, because I believe that even though I wasn't the best kid all through my life, I do believe it did center me a little bit with some of my morals. And so she said, I've heard some good things about this church called Northview. We need to go give it a shot. It's not a traditional church. I think you might like it. And the rest of the story is life-changing. From the minute that I walked in there, man, it was just a church that was, I didn't know churches operated like that. I didn't know that there were people like you that had, you know, little funky goatees and like cool hair, and we can drink beer and we can actually talk about God, and it was not like what I knew growing up.
Yeah.
And so I walk in this place, and Poe is just doing his thing, and the first thing I see is just this giant Mall of America like type structure of walking in, and just the children facilities were awesome, and just there was what I kind of comically refer to as Jesus bucks at the front of the, you know, where you can go get a coffee, and
Jesus bucks.
So I was just taken aback by how awesome church could be. And it wasn't just the look, you know, it had to be more. So that's obviously me being conceited and thinking that it looks cool. But once I got in, the message that came across, like, I understood. And it was like I understood the words. I understood that it wasn't all about just Bible verse. And that was mixed in, but it was given with a way that I could understand what was happening.
Yeah.
So that was the start of really me figuring out, all right, this isn't a home just for my children. I've now found a place for me, and reconnecting.
Yeah. And so you get back reconnected, you begin that process and find a good church to call home and your family, but then things get a little bit crazier, and I know we talked a little bit about the story leading up to your baptism was pretty catalytic and kind of a next level kind of all in, if you will, whatever. But it mixes in, like, I don't want to steal the thunder, but like life and death and ambulances and little drama. So take us to that one.
Well, so one of the reasons why I like Northview is I'm kind of like I'm a doer. I'm not a talker. I don't like people that talk a big game and then they don't back it up with anything. And that's where I felt like some of the churches I had seen and come from talked a good game, but there was I never saw any impact. And that's one of the reasons why I really like Northview is I just liked how they wanted you to get involved in community events, and not only did they just say it, but then they helped organize them. And then, you know, the what they did for children all over the world. There were so many things that they impacted, and I liked that they were involved that way. And so, in doing that, I kept getting more and more involved. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do the Alpha course, because that's a course they offered. And then I wanted to do one more thing, so I started volunteering in the daycare, and so it was just one after another. And so then I go to a service, and Steve's talking about baptism. Well, I mean, if you've never seen a water baptism at a church like Northview or any church, I mean, I'm like, well, you can tell that I'm a crier, if you haven't noticed. And going to that and seeing hearing the words and just watching them go through that, I'm just waterworks the entire time. And I'm like, I gotta do this. This is awesome. This would be like for me, kind of setting drawing a line in the sand. It would be my moment where I'm already all in, but this would be me committing. And so I kept saying I would. So now bring the restaurants back into this thing, and it was like always one more. I'm like, all right, next baptism I'll do it, and next baptism. Let me just get one more Scotty's open, and then I'll do it next baptism. And it just, that kind of crap crept back into my life, and I got I was down in South Carolina. I think it was 4 years ago, I think now, and I started going numb. My body started going numb, and I thought I was having a heart attack because it felt like left side was all paralyzed. And so we're getting ready to fly back to Indiana after a week's vacation in Hilton Head, and I can't talk. And my buddy's a doctor, and my wife hands me her phone, and I'm trying to talk to her, and I'm slurring, and I hand the phone back to her, and his comment to her was, hang up with me right now and call 911. And so I spent 2 weeks in a hospital down there. They could not figure out what was wrong with me. They put me through every test, and so I fly back to Indiana. My dad and I go and look at Three Wise Men. I think it just opened, so we go there and go look around, and then we go back to home. And that night at 2 a.m, my hand starts going numb again, and I wake up my wife, and I tell her it's happening again. And so about 2 a.m, ambulance shows up, and man, I'll just never forget that night. I mean, as batshit crazy as I was going at that moment, I just remember so many things happening. And I remember getting on that gurney myself, and getting in. I remember them banging me into the back of that ambulance, and the lady kept trying to ask me my name, and I could see it in my head, but I could not say it. And that was the moment where I said, God, this isn't me, the guy that couldn't find his keys. This is me, your friend down here, who has 4 young kids and a wife, and I know I told you I would get baptized, but I promise that if you get me out of this, I promise that I will do that. And so I went to the hospital, and it took him. I was going through seizures is what I was experiencing at that time that I didn't know. And man, it was bad. It was ugly. They put me in an MRI machine, and I was trying to wrestle. This part I don't remember. My dad said I was trying to wrestle cops, and they thought I was on meth, and my wife's trying to promise them that I don't do meth. And so I came out of it. Man, it was just, I remember waking up, and my mom was right in my face, and I said, I got to get out of here. I've got a party that Amy and I are supposed to go to tomorrow night. And she said, honey, that was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
And so I get out of there. I'll give you I'll try to shorten this up a little bit, or I'll just keep crying. I finally, it took about 2 or 3 weeks. There was a lot of hemorrhaging in my brain. I had to go on to anti-seizure medicine. I'll tell you, bitch about that is you can't drive. Apparently, there's a law
About operating motor vehicle while having seizures. That's a crap.
So for 6 months, I couldn't drive. I was on anti-seizure medicine just to make sure that I didn't go crazy again. And I had a disease. They don't know why it happened. There was just something. They think that either a mosquito bit me or that something was just in my body that was just sitting and got activated somehow. And it was called viral encephalitis. And it was my buddy, who's a doctor, told me after I finally recovered. He was like, not many people come back from that altogether. And so the first service.
But are there points in that, Scott, where you're thinking like this may be it? Like I'm tapping out.
Oh yeah. When I was in the ambulance, both ambulance rides, I remember clearly like fighting not to go to sleep because I thought that if I closed my eyes, because I was tired, and I don't know if that's like how it gets, but I remember fighting that because I felt like if I close my eyes and I fall asleep, because it would just be so easy to do that, then I'm gone.
Wow.
And you just have. I mean, you're that cliche, your life flashing in front of you, that happens. I mean, it was like a film strip of I was just seeing myself as a kid, and then I was seeing a lot of it was my children. I was thinking about not being able to teach my son how to shave, or walk my daughter down the aisle. I mean, you go through all those like cliche things, and I mean, it's just scary, you know.
Yeah.
Like it's just, I just felt, and I was just angry. I was like, man, I had so much more to do, and I let work get in the way of like things where I could be with my children, or I'd put in a couple extra hours of work, or I'd go in on a Saturday and skip this, and I'm like, I think that God was talking to me for so long, and I kept ignoring him, and he's like, this is your final warning, you know. I'm gonna tap you on the shoulder, and I'm gonna wake you up, and hopefully you listen.
Yeah.
And so, after I got out of there and got back into home and rested, my first church service that I walked into, Steve was asking for if anybody wanted me to get baptized.
You're like, this guy right here.
Service.
This guy.
And so hand went up, and that's kind of when everything, I did it. I mean, I got baptized. I had friends flying from Atlanta who just was so special for me. You know, his comment to me was, "This is something that's as big as a wedding to me." Mm-hmm. And he just said, "I wouldn't miss it for the world."
Yeah.
So,
wow. Once again, guys, if you want to send any questions in, you can send them in 317-550-5070. We'll do our best to answer any questions that come in. We've got a couple coming in, but we'll get there in a minute. 317-550-5070. So that happens, Scott. You get baptized, and you've been following Christ for a while. But how does that begin to shift your focus? I mean, as a restaurant owner, as an entrepreneur, as a dad, as a husband, as a man. How does that moment? How did it reshape things for you?
you know, I think that was kind of like the starting line. Like it was like, all right, draw a line in the sand, and this is where you get to wash clean all the dumb stuff that you did. We forgive you. You know, you don't have to keep beating yourself up about it. You're forgiven. And it takes a while for you to really forgive yourself.
Wow.
For things. And so I think that it wasn't just the baptism. I mean, that was the start. And I think from there it was just me. For me, it was hearing the things that Steve says in his services, for me, just connect so well. And it's just like, I remember one morning this was actually one morning 4 years ago, because I've now been reading my Bible. I think I tell you I'm up to 78% on my Kindle.
Yeah.
But 4 years ago, he told me you need to, if you can't be the Word or live the Word if you don't read the Word or know the Word. And so, but I knew that I couldn't just read the Bible because it was way too difficult. I'd tried numerous times and I'd always given up. And so I told you that there's a book called The Story that if anybody's ever wanted to just try to read the Bible or understand what's happening in it, besides the stories that you know about Adam and Eve and the stories that everybody knows. It was a cool way where they took the Bible, put it in chronological order, and put it in words that a dumb guy like me can understand. And so I read that first, and then I got into the Bible. And this morning, I think there's a couple pages that I read, and I'm like, I do not understand what's going on here, but I'm gonna keep trying. I'm gonna keep reading it, and so every morning I get up at 5:30 and I read that for 10 minutes, so things like that are just little pieces that I can constantly push myself. So and I love it for my children, because my children, I love hearing them say, you know, Daddy, when you're up in the morning and you're reading your Bible, and I love hearing them say that, because I'm hoping that when they get older, they'll think back to that moment and they'll think, all right, I need to read the Bible. My dad did, and I want to try to be like Daddy. And so I love that for them. But I think that from a business standpoint, what everything did, that whole culmination of going through what I went through and then getting baptized, that was the personal side. The professional side for me was it changed my whole outlook about my business. I just felt like instead of trying to grow, even though I still push myself probably harder than I should, I knew that the 1,500 or 1,200, all the minds that I have, young minds working for me, I wanted to do more than just teach them how to serve burgers and fries and beer, although delicious. I wanted, not that I can serve a role like a teacher or a parent, because I think those people are some of the best people in the world, that what they do for our children, coaches, but I knew that I could serve a little part. And I've had many that have talked to me and said, hey, Scott, alumni. I mean, we're now 20 years old, so I've got alumni that will come back to me and say, that stuff that you did changed the way that the direction I was going. And that kind of thing is what really resonates with me, because I feel like God put me here and took me through all this stuff, the highs and especially the lows, to say, you're going to be out there and you're going to help me attract people that understand what you're saying. They get you.
Yeah. They
look at you and they think, okay, he's a normal dude. He's not some whacked out, crazy, fanatical, Bible beater.
Right.
You can love God, and you can have a beer, and you can say a curse word every now and then, although you're not supposed to, and I'll apologize for it later. But there are real people that really can make a difference and affect people, like you do. I think like you and like Matt does, and I think that they're just, that to me is what I think God put me here. And so when after I went through all that, I developed a mission statement for my company. 17 years at this time. So I never would have one, because I thought it was just some cliche BS thing you're supposed to do when you become a business. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to fight the power. That's BS. Until I went through what I did. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to develop a mission statement that is about my people. And so the front of the vision card says, I will work today and I will make blank proud. And so they can come to work and they can hate me, but if they want to make themselves proud, or their mom proud, or their children, or their dad, then they write that down in the card. They make whoever they want proud. And then the back side of the card says, there's about 20 different things that it says, and it's things like don't hit and play fair and be nice and do good in the world. The thing that I stress the most importance upon is do something, donate your mind, body, and soul to some kind of philanthropic charity every 90 days. So every 30 days we put together something, whether it's Habitat or Dayspring or Kids Against Hunger, name 1,000 different charities, and I put something together so that they can put their heart into something.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I love, is that I'm hoping that someone in this building is affected by that. I feel like that's what God is asking me to do. Not only for my own staff, they're the ones that are the closest to me, but you can see the things that we do outside of the restaurant. You can see how we take toys to Peyton Manning's Children's Hospital, or you can see how we do things like this. I think we try to make an impact in our community, because I feel like it's not just about the burgers and the beers and the fries, it's about making our world a better place.
Yeah, it's great, Scott. So as we wrap up, like, let's say there's somebody here tonight, maybe they're in that crossroad, period that you were in. Maybe they're in their 20s, or maybe they're newly married, or maybe they're just having kids. I mean, they're at a place where it's like, man, I grew up with some kind of faith background, or even if I didn't, but I'm just wondering if there's something else there that I need to tie into. Like, what would be your word of encouragement to them?
Man, I would say, even if you're just wondering, then why not? What would be the downside of going to see something? You either don't like it and you're back to just where you are right now, or you find out that it can completely change your life, which I've just taken the last 30 minutes to tell you what it's done to mine. I hope that, if anything, I can be a little bit of an inspiration to say that normal people that come from those kind of backgrounds that just wonder, there's a place for us.
Yeah.
You know, and he knows I'm not perfect. I screw up daily, and there are things that I question. I told my mom the other day that for my birthday, I just turned 42 about a week ago. I told her I'm getting more tattoos, and she said, God doesn't like that. You're not supposed to mark on your body. And so, you know, right or wrong, I mean, I guess that God will judge me for some of those things, but I'm hoping that maybe some of the good that I'm doing maybe outweighs some of the bad. I don't know. I just don't have all those answers.
Yeah.
But that's the love of life, man. If I can just if I'm helping other people in the process and I'm not really totally screwing up, then I feel like that's anybody that would ever question. I don't know if you would agree that if it's reading the story first, I don't think the story really would change you. In my opinion, it's finding a home first. I don't know if it's pub or if it's finding somebody you can even talk to. Like that might be the easiest way to do it instead of trying to, because Northview. I'm not here to promote Northview because I think some people are intimidated by it. Some people walk in there and they're like, oh my God, there's like 7,000 people. This isn't a church. This is a giant mall of America.
Right.
But I don't know. When I get in there, I just zone in on one person or a couple people, and I'm just like, the music is awesome. I'm zoned in on that person is talking to me. I get it. But I think everybody can find a different place.
Yeah.
You know, it's fine. I think it starts with finding that right home, and then figuring out from yourself what you're looking for. You know, are you looking to find God?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love about your story that's consistent throughout it, Scott, is this idea, and it's the amazing thing that we have in this thing called the gospel, right? The good news of Jesus is he's the only person that ever came up with this idea called grace, right? Where you can't earn it, you can't do enough, you know, to deserve it, and it's this free, undeserved, unearned, you know, favor and love of God, and the idea of grace is. Is all of our lives, but I love that. I think that you live that out because I follow you on Instagram and Twitter and whatever, got to know you, and like I love that you don't try to put out a false polished image, and I think the reality is what I love and have enjoyed about following Jesus is in the ups and downs and I've got plenty of scars and failures in my own life, is that to realize that, wow, this isn't a journey for people that are perfect. This is a journey for people that at some point, whether it be in the back of an ambulance or maybe it's just at Scotty's tonight, you come to a place humble enough to say, I think I need some help. You know what I mean? And to get connected to a God that can say, you know what, this isn't about you doing it perfect. This is about you receiving this free gift of love. You know what I mean? Because grace is possible through the love of Jesus. And so tonight, guys, if that connected with you and you might want to take a first step towards that journey, Scott talked about that book, The Story, that kind of puts the Bible in chronological order. We've got a handful of copies of those. In fact, they're in the van, and I forgot to bring them in, so I need somebody to help me with that. But if you tonight would want to get one of those, we want to give you one as a free gift tonight to kind of get you started on that journey. And so, that's something that we want to make available to you tonight. And in just a minute, we're going to kind of turn things back over to the table of discussions. But I want to get real quick just a couple of questions that we had come in. Scott, 317-550-5070 once again. Somebody said this, Scott. What's the first baby step in getting a little bit closer to God? Is a question that came in.
Well, for me, I think the baby step was, I think the first baby step is if you already have a question, that means you already want something. It means the seed is, I think, already inside you planted, that you're questioning it. So you've already taken the first baby step. You've already got that inside you. I think the second step now is actually taking a step. I think that's sometimes the hardest part, is the saying, I mean, let's be real, okay? This past Sunday, I get up and I've got a little bit of a beer hangover, and church is not the first thing on my mind. I want to get the kids donuts, and then it's like a day that I can finally relax.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes that's the hardest part, is taking that step. Not that it's fair to even equate like going to the gym with going to see God, but I think I always tell my staff when they come to work, I'm like, the hardest part is getting here. If you're like working on a Tuesday morning in February, you already set the alarm, and you already got here, and you got up, and you came to work, and it might be slow, but you're here, so why not work hard? And I equate that to the gym. The hardest part is getting there. The hardest part is just walking into church, maybe it's finding that church, and that's the part that I feel like I can't give the right answer to, because I think the church is can be so much, can be different for everybody.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that to back it up, I'd say the easiest baby step would be I would let you just call me. You know, if anybody really is questioning it, if you don't feel comfortable going to somebody in this room or going to Darren, I'm available. My email's on our website. You can tweet me, and I read everything. So I'll send you a direct message back, and I'll give you my phone number, and I'll talk to you, and I'll invite you. Can come to church with me if you want. You can come to Northview, and I'll walk in there with you so you can see what I see. And you might not like it. You might say, all right, this isn't for me. Or maybe it'll be that thing that does what it did to me and just really inspires and lights the fire.
Yeah, yeah. If you guys have any questions, let us know, because we've got a lot of great churches that we're connected to around the city. Northview is one of them. Mercy Road's in the Church in Carmel, as well as once a quarter we get together and do a worship and a celebration called the Celebration, which a lot of times it's on the Regent's rooftop or down at the Mirage. And we can get you connected, as well as just we're looking to possibly even start something here at Scotty's that would just be like a Monday night discussion group where we could read the story and just get a chance to ask questions and go on that journey. So please talk to us tonight before you leave if that's something that you'd like to get connected with. Here's a question that came in that it's not as spiritual, but it's interesting. Is what's behind the drink local, think global?
Yeah, I hate to say that I borrowed it, but Jeff Meese, who's a buddy of mine from Bloomington Brewing Company, wouldn't mind that I saw it on a shirt of his 20 years ago, and I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And it essentially means that you should think globally, think about our entire world, and drink locally or eat locally, support the local guys. I mean, as much as I'm trying to be the anti-chain, we look like it's hard for me to go around now and say eat local, and people are like, well, you're not local, Scott. You got like 15 restaurants, and I say, well, you can have my $4 million in debt because I'm the only sole owner of the bank that I'm responsible to the bank. There's nobody else besides me, so I'm not some giant conglomerate corporation. So
yeah, it's a good one. It's good. Once again, any other questions? We're wrapping up for a minute. 317-550-5070. If we don't get to them live tonight, we can text you back and let you know about that. But I'm going to wrap up actually and turn it over to the table discussions if you guys would like. And the reason we call this the invitation is because you're invited to be here. And every time we have an invitation, we like to give the invitation to consider a relationship with Christ. And it's real simple. You can put it in your own words, but it's basically just changing your mind about whatever thought you may have had about God and realize that, you know what, this could be something I could try. This could be a journey that I could take, and just really honestly and humbly asking Jesus to help you make that journey. We'd love to talk to you guys about that tonight. I'm going to close this with a quick word of prayer, and then if you want to text any more questions, you can do so. And if you'd like to, talk to your table leader, to Andy or I, and we can get you one of these stories. They're really, really cool. Like Scott said, it puts the Bible in chronological order, makes it a lot easier to understand and read. We'd love to get you connected with that. So, Scott, thanks for being here tonight. Thanks for sharing your story.
Thank all of you for coming out, too.
Absolutely. And we'll wrap up just like this. God, thanks for tonight. Thanks for a chance to be here. Thanks for every individual that's here tonight. And it's not an accident that they're here. And I just pray that, God, there's something that Scott said tonight or something that you said to them in their heart struck a chord, maybe began to change some thinking in some way. And, if you're here tonight and that's something that you would like to pursue, you can put it in your own words, but it can be a simple prayer like this. Dear God, I think I got it wrong. Help me to change my mind and to see you as you are. Help me to see your love in a relationship as a place that I could actually call home. And if that's something you'd like to do, please come talk to us. But God, anybody that feels that way, I just pray tonight that you'd help them to sense your love, your presence, and your affirmation of them, that you're proud of them, that you made them on purpose. You've seen their greatest day, you've seen their worst day, and you love them just the same. And just thanks for being that kind of God that is love, and that is grace, and that is just an amazing friend. You're the best, God. Thanks for tonight, and we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Enjoy yourself, guys. Hang out. If you want to tweet any or text any more questions in, you can do so. If you want to talk to Andy or myself about snagging one of these story Bibles, we'd love to get you one. And just continue to hang out. Thanks for being here tonight.